everyone. Welcome back to my channel. I know it's been a very hot minute since I last posted, and a lot of things have happened since. I have gotten married, I've changed my hair like 5 times, and I had a baby. So that's what I'm here to talk to you about today. I wanted to share my labor and delivery story with you all. Handy dandy notes right here. But I was pregnant from March of 2021 to November of 2021. My daughter was born on November 16th, and I had a pretty easy pregnancy, thank God. Can't really ask for anything better, I would say. It was pretty smooth sailing. I would just felt really uncomfortable by the end of it, but that's normal. And I did have to get induced. So that is something that's really important to me to talk about, because I know that inductions can be really scary. I had no idea what an induction was when I was scheduled for one. And I wanted to talk about how that's so important to share positive induction stories, because every time you hear induction, you hear, oh, it took forever, 3 days, I was in labor and I ended up having to get a C-section, and that's really not how all inductions go. So this is my way of sharing some positive light on my induction experience. Okay, so labor and delivery. This starts actually at week 37 for me. So week 37, I was itchy, and I thought it was just like a pregnancy symptom. I was like, whatever, it's fine. But I casually mentioned it to my OB, and I was like, hey, I'm kind of itchy. And he was like, oh, let's test your bile acids, which is like your liver. And it turns out that my bile acid levels were borderline high, and that means that my liver was producing a chemical that's toxic for the placenta. So at that point, the baby is safer out than in, and at 38 weeks, I was scheduled for an induction. So the condition is called cholestasis, and I had a very, 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 very mild version of it. I know people who've been super duper itchy, and it's caused rashes and things like that. Luckily for me, it was not the same. It was just mild itching, and that is why I didn't even think anything of it. I was just like, oh, it's just a pregnancy symptom, and it turns out it wasn't. But my OB was great. He scheduled me for my induction right away once we got my results, and I ended up having a normal vaginal delivery after 32 hours of labor. So here is my positive induction experience. So I was induced on November 14th at 9:45 p.m. And the reason they did it at night is so that overnight the induction process could happen. And I took 5 rounds of Cytotec. So Cytotec is an oral pill that they give you to induce labor. So I got my first dose at 9:45 p.m. And then I got 5 more doses. So I think my last dose was 1:45 p.m. the next day. And it was just an oral dose. It was a pill, kept taking it every 4 hours. And then I was dilating probably around noon the next day. So the 15th is when I was really in active labor. And when I had dilated to about 4 centimeters, I asked for the epidural. If you are getting induced, or if you are curious about inductions, you've probably heard that inducing the labor in an induction hurts more than a labor naturally, and that's because your body, when you go through labor naturally, is able to produce the endorphins to counteract the pain, whereas in an induction it's not. So I was not happy with the pain I was in. It was definitely worse than period cramps. I don't even know how to describe it, but I would hold on to the hospital bed and wait for the contraction to pass. And my husband was great. He would do a lot of counter massaging on my lower back and pushing to alleviate the pain. But I tried to go as long as I could without getting the epidural. And then about 5 p.m. that day. I was 4 centimeters dilated, and I was like, I need the epidural now. And my nurse was great too. She was just like, just ask for it. There's no prize for being in pain. Like, you're not going to get mom of the year for not getting an epidural. So I got the epidural. I didn't even look at it. I know that I saw like an animated diagram of when we did childbirth classes, but I did not want to see the needle. I'm so terrified of needles. I did not want to see anything. So the anesthesiologist came in, did her thing, and it honestly was not that painful. Like, I've heard horror stories about the epidural, but I had a very pleasant experience with it. My water broke naturally after I got the epidural, and that was a good sign. That means Issa was descending, and that's when my active labor really started. So I had the epidural. I was in bliss, and they gave me a remote with the epidural. So anytime I felt a little bit of pain, I could press the button, and it would shoot more epidural into my body and I'd be fine. So it was great. I took a nap. I watched YouTube. I was watching E! And Bravo, talking to my husband. We were doing, I think, our wedding album or something at the time. So we were just chilling for a while. But I was getting a little frustrated because I didn't know how much I was dilating, since they didn't want to check my cervix too much because that is a risk for infection. So they were just like, we're just going to let you keep going. And I'm like, keep going. I want this baby out like today. I was like, November 15th is a great birthday. Like, let's get this baby out. And they were just like, be patient. The baby will come when the baby's ready. So I just kept chilling for a while, and then at midnight was when the pain really started. So while I didn't feel the pain of the contractions, Issa was literally sitting on top of my rectum, and I felt like I had to go, and that was really painful because you can't go. I had the epidural, and I was like, what do I do now? Like, I can't go to the bathroom. Like, I'm like in active labor. So basically what I ended up having to do is like a hypno birthing technique called moo breathing. So anytime a contraction was coming, and I could see it on the screen, they had the contraction monitor. So I could see the contraction coming. I would inhale, and then at the peak of the contraction, I would exhale and I would say moo. And eventually that got me into a very meditative state. I almost didn't feel pain at all. I knew that she was like on top of all my organs and I wanted her out and I was in pain, but I was in a meditative state. So it almost felt like I wasn't in pain because I just was observing the pain, not experiencing it. I know it sounds woo, but it works. So I highly recommend the moo hypnobirthing technique. And then I did have upper back pain. I have a lot of tension in my upper back. So they gave me Tylenol for it because my upper back would clench and tighten to the point where I couldn't sit up or even lie down. So they did give me Tylenol for that. And the beautiful thing about my labor was my nurses. I had 3. They were all amazing. And honestly, all the staff and all the medical staff was truly amazing. But and I feel very lucky and blessed to have had that experience. But my nurse who was with me during active labor, she made me labor longer. So what happened was I was, she was sitting on my rectum. I was like, can we get this baby out? Like, can we just start pushing? And what she did was she was like, labor longer, so you have to push less. So when it came time to push, it was 4:45 in the morning, and I was so ready to have this baby by this point. I was like, get the baby out. And so she was like, okay, let's do a practice push. Because she was like, you're dilated, the head's pretty low, let's do it. Let's start pushing. So I pushed, and she started crowning. So the nurse was like, okay, let's wait, let's call a doctor. So she went and gets the doctor. Meanwhile, I just had like a head casually chilling down there. And then it only took me 2 practice pushes and 1 real push to get her out. The whole pushing process took about 15 minutes, and then she was born. And it was honestly amazing. Like, would totally do it again. I would love to have more children if we are blessed with that. But I had a really positive induction experience, and I know it can be scary, especially with a lot of rhetoric around natural birthing and not having an epidural and not having medical intervention online. I wanted to have a natural labor. I did not want to have an epidural. I didn't want to get induced. That was not my birth plan, but it all went out the window when it came to the safety of my baby. And if it was safer out than in, we had to do the induction. I was not going to play, with that. So I had an induction for a medical reason. I know people have inductions because they get to 40, 41 weeks, haven't gone into labor, but want the baby out. Whatever you decide to do for your body and your baby is best for you. I just wanted to share my positive experience with an induction. It truly was almost just like a regular experience, just my labor was longer and a little bit more painful probably, but I'm glad that everything happened in the hospital. So if I needed help with anything, or if I needed support, I had people at the hospital and my husband to help me out. And finally, I just want to say labor was not as bad as the pain you get postpartum. I did have to get two stitches down there, and it was not fun. Once the epidural wore off and once all the painkillers wore off and all of that, I was in so much pain. I was like, I'm sitting on knives. So for the first couple days, I was taking Tylenol and Motrin to help with that pain. And then eventually, as the stitches healed, I felt back to normal. I would say about week 5 postpartum was when things finally felt normal, and I felt like I didn't have to be horizontal all the time, and sitting wasn't a problem. And the bleeding had also subsided a little bit. But yeah, I will say that I think postpartum is definitely more painful than labor and delivery. But that's just me, and that is as someone who got the epidural. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so glad to be back on YouTube. I'm so glad to have shared this story with you guys. If you're getting induced, please know that it is not so scary, and I hope you have the most wonderful birthing experience, even if you're pregnant or want to be pregnant or whatever your situation is. I just wish you all the very best. So thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next video.